The laughter didn't erupt, it settled. It slid across the gun shop like dust disturbed by careless boots, soft, confident, unchallenged. 3 men behind the counter, 1 customer leaning near the optics wall, all of them smiling for the same reason, and standing alone at the center of it was Evelyn Morrow. She had learned to recognize rooms like this instantly, rooms that decided things about you before you spoke, before you moved, before you existed. She stood still, feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced evenly, not because she was nervous, but because her body defaulted to readiness even when her mind didn't need it. The bell above the door finished chiming behind her. Gun oil, old wood, faint metal polish, the quiet hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The man closest to her leaned forward on the counter, elbows planted, grin already forming. "You sure you're in the right place, ma'am?" he asked, glancing at the others. "We sell firearms here." A low chuckle answered him. Evelyn met his eyes calmly. "Yes," she said. "That's why I'm here." The clerk blinked, surprised she'd answered without embarrassment. "What are you looking for?" "A MK-18 upper receiver," she replied. "SOCOM profile, suppressor ready. I'll need documentation for restricted transfer." For half a second, the room hesitated. Then the laughter came back louder. 1 man behind the counter slapped the wood. Another shook his head slowly, like he'd just heard a joke he wanted to savor. The customer by the optics rack laughed openly now. The clerk smiled wide. "That setup's military restricted," he said. "You wouldn't even know how to run it." Evelyn inhaled through her nose. She reached into her jacket. Before her fingers touched the folder inside, the clerk waved his hand dismissively. "Don't bother," he said. "Look, sweetheart, there's a Pilates studio down the road. Try there." Something in the way he said, "sweetheart," hardened the air. Evelyn didn't react. She didn't glare, didn't argue, didn't explain. She had learned long ago that arguing with certainty was a waste of breath. She stood still and waited. Silence had been Evelyn's first lesson. She learned it at home. Her father, Petty Officer First Class Morrow, didn't raise his voice. Ever. When he spoke, people listened. Not because he demanded it, because he never wasted words. At 13, she asked him why. "Because noise is for people who need attention," he said. "Competence doesn't." That lesson stayed with her. At Annapolis, it nearly broke her. Plebe summer was loud. Instructors shouted. Cadets postured. Egos collided. Evelyn learned quickly that the fastest way to disappear was to outperform expectations quietly. She didn't complain when assigned extra drills, didn't announce her scores, didn't explain herself when classmates assumed she needed help. She just did the work. And when the instructors noticed, they didn't praise her. They simply stopped questioning her presence. That was enough. Evelyn's fingers brushed the edge of the paperwork inside her jacket. She could end this. She could lay the documents on the counter. Military authorization, procurement forms, her rank, her unit. The laughter would stop instantly. Apologies would follow. Embarrassed backtracking. She could do that. But she didn't. Not yet. Because she wanted to see something. She wanted to know how far certainty would go when unchallenged. The clerk leaned back, satisfied. "Anything else?" he asked. "Maybe a pink holster?" The customer laughed again. Evelyn felt it then, that familiar tightening in her chest. Not anger, not shame. Something colder. Resolve. And then, the door opened. The bell rang once, then again. Footsteps followed. Heavy, measured, unhurried. 1 man entered, then another, then another. 7 in total. They didn't fan out dramatically, didn't scan the room in obvious ways, but Evelyn noticed it instantly. Angles, spacing, awareness. Men who moved like they were always half a second ahead of the room. The laughter died mid-breath. The first man through the door was tall, broad-shouldered, hair cropped short and graying at the temples. He paused just inside, eyes moving reflexively. Then he saw her. Everything about him shifted, not dramatically, subtly, like a weapon coming off safe. He stopped. The others followed his gaze. Recognition rippled through them, silent, immediate. Without a word, they adjusted positions, not crowding her, not surrounding, just standing behind her. 7 men, 1 line. The room fell silent. The clerk frowned. Can I help you guys?" The tall man spoke. "Afternoon." His voice wasn't raised, But it carried. He nodded slightly toward Evelyn. "Lieutenant Morrow." She turned. "Yes, Chief." The word hit the room like a dropped weight. The clerk's face drained of color. One of the other men behind the counter stiffened. The customer near the optics rack suddenly found the floor very interesting. The chief took one step closer to the counter. "Is there a problem here?" The clerk stammered. I didn't know." "No," the chief said calmly. "You didn't look." Evelyn stepped forward and placed the folder on the counter. "I'm still here for the equipment," she said evenly. The clerk's hands trembled as he reached for the keys. One of the SEALs leaned casually against a display case, voice low. "Sir," he said, "do you normally speak to Navy officers like that?" The clerk shook his head quickly. "No, of course not." "Good," the SEAL said, "because this one trained half the men standing behind you." The customer by the optics rack quietly set his item down and left. The bell chimed again as the door closed behind him. Lieutenant Evelyn Morrow was 29 years old, 5'7", 140 pounds, graduated near the top of her class at Annapolis, selected for a joint advisory role with Naval Special Warfare after only 3 years of service. She was not loud. She was not charismatic in the traditional sense. She did not dominate rooms, but she listened with a focus that unsettled people, and when she spoke, she was precise. Her evaluations reflected it, demonstrates exceptional situational awareness, commands trust without coercion, leads by presence, not performance. Those lines bothered some people, especially Colonel Andrew Brandt. Colonel Brandt watched people the way a chess player watched pieces. He had climbed through the ranks by being visible, decisive, unapologetic. He believed leadership required force. When Evelyn Morrow was assigned to his operational sphere, he objected. "She doesn't fit the profile," he told the review board. "She fits the mission," came the response. Brandt accepted it outwardly. Internally, he waited for her to falter, to hesitate, to give him a reason. The SEALs didn't follow Evelyn because of rank. They followed her because of a night in the rain, 2 years earlier, a coastal extraction drill gone wrong. Weather rolled in faster than forecast, visibility collapsed, comms degraded, the plan unraveled, someone had to hold the corridor while the rest cleared. Evelyn stepped forward. "I'll cover," she said. The chief protested. She shook her head. "I'll be last." She held that position under simulated fire until everyone cleared. When she finally withdrew, soaked, shaking, and exhausted, not a single man questioned her authority again. She didn't mention it afterward, didn't add it to a report, didn't expect thanks. The men remembered anyway. The clerk slid the paperwork back across the counter, hands steadier now. We can process this," he said. "I'm sorry about earlier." Evelyn nodded once. "Thank you." She didn't accept the apology. She didn't reject it. She simply took the equipment. As she turned to leave, the chief fell in step beside her. "Everything squared away?" he asked. "Yes," she said. He studied her for a moment. "Some people still don't see it," he said. She met his eyes. "They don't need to." Fort Hollis sat along the Atlantic coast like a concrete scar. Radar domes cut into the sky. Security lights hummed through the night. At night, the base breathed differently. Red lights, muffled boots, quiet voices over secure channels. Evelyn stood on the observation deck as Task Group Sable prepared below. 7 operators checked gear with ritual precision. Inside the command building, Colonel Brandt watched her through reinforced glass. She felt it. That weight. That attention. She didn't look back. One of the 7 SEALs lingered longer than the others that night. Petty Officer Lucas Hale, younger than the rest, quieter. He watched Evelyn from a distance, jaw tight. She didn't notice. But he remembered something she didn't know he knew. A report. Years ago, a name quietly removed from disciplinary action. His name, because someone had taken responsibility that wasn't theirs. And now she stood here again, uncelebrated, unprotected, walking into another storm. The base was quiet at 2300 hours. Red lights hummed softly along the concrete barriers. The wind carried the smell of salt and oil across the docks. Lieutenant Evelyn Morrow moved between the rows of operators methodically. Each man or woman checked gear with meticulous care. Magazines, optics, suppressors, radios. No chatter beyond what was necessary. A small team of 6 was already assembled for briefing. She counted heads instinctively. 7, including herself. The briefing room itself smelled of stale coffee and varnished wood. The overhead projector cast a green hue across maps, satellite imagery, and a grid of operational notes. Colonel Brandt had yet to arrive. That was standard. His presence, or absence, was a test, one she'd grown accustomed to reading. 2 years earlier, the coastal extraction drill, rain fell sideways. Visibility, near zero. Comms, jammed. The plan had been simple on paper. Insert, secure the objective, extract within 30 minutes. In practice, chaos. A junior officer panicked, misread coordinates, split the team. Evelyn had a choice. Follow procedure or improvise. She had improvised, held the corridor herself, ensured the rest of the team cleared safely. She had emerged at the end, soaked, trembling, but intact. Command would later debrief the operation as a failure due to a miscommunication. She had submitted the report herself, took full responsibility, didn't mention the officer who caused the mishap, didn't mention the team she had saved. Just blame assumed, mission preserved, team protected. Those who were there remembered, those who weren't, oblivious. Moral courage rarely has a payoff. It often has a price. At Annapolis, her instructors admired her. Her peers resented her. In the field, some commanders tolerated her. Others resented her influence. Colonel Brandt was one of the latter. He preferred visible obedience. She preferred silent competence. And that made him dangerous, because competent officers who don't perform for visibility challenge the entire hierarchy. He had learned quickly. The harder he pressed, the more Evelyn held. Petty Officer Lucas Hale shifted his weight on the observation deck. He had a quiet energy about him, reserved, thoughtful, analytical. 2 years ago, he'd been the one who had faltered during the extraction drill, the one Evelyn had covered. He had remembered every detail. The fear, the shame, the cold rain, the way she had stood there, unwavering, while bullets, or simulated bullets, splashed around him. It had been a defining moment in his life. He still carried survivor's guilt, and yet, tonight, he was the first to respond instinctively to her orders, not because of rank, not because of obligation, because he trusted her. Colonel Brandt finally arrived. The room tightened immediately. Even seasoned SEALs stiffened. He didn't greet anyone. He walked to the head of the table, arms crossed. "Lieutenant Morrow," he said, eyes cold. "I trust you understand the stakes tonight." Evelyn remained calm, expression neutral. "Yes, sir." "Good. Then let's review." He tapped a slide with a precise motion, showing the objective, timing, and contingencies. He lingered on one point. "Failures in past exercises have been noted," he said. "We can't repeat them." His eyes locked on hers, just long enough. Not threatening, subtle, calculated. Task group. Sable moved quietly around the room. Each operator knew Evelyn's style, minimal words, precise direction. Trust, not fear, dictated behavior. Yet even within this small circle, dynamics were complex. Hale, quiet and loyal, struggled with self-doubt. Chief Ramirez, veteran and mentor, read the room constantly, ready to intervene if necessary. Other SEALs, each with their own histories, each with a personal debt or respect for Evelyn, followed her silently. They were a family forged in shadows and danger. Brandt saw only the outward professionalism. He didn't see the unseen debts, the past saved lives, the subtle trust that held this unit together. That would be his first mistake. Evelyn's first deployment had been a turning point. Afghanistan, 2016. Patrol in Helmand Province. She was fresh out of Annapolis, barely 25, assigned to a small joint task force with Navy SEALs, Special Forces, and Afghan National Army liaisons. During a convoy, an IED exploded. Chaos, civilians in danger, allies injured. She reacted, not because she was trained to, because she had no choice, directed medics, organized evacuation routes, held morale while leadership panicked. When the dust settled, the patrol had saved both soldiers and civilians. She had been commended quietly. But in the bureaucratic paperwork, the accolades were buried, because loud victories were for loud officers. Quiet ones went unnoticed. The briefing returned to present tense. Objective: a simulated high-value target extraction in a coastal urban environment. Time window: 0400, 0600 hours. Insertion: Blackwater approach. Challenges: unpredictable surveillance drones, unknown patrol patterns, weather variability. Evelyn outlined adjustments. Shift approach vector 5 degrees east. Maintain spacing at 2-meter intervals. Comms remain encrypted on standard Navy frequency. Abort conditions defined. Execute per SOP if extraction compromised. Her voice was calm, measured, no hesitation, yet everyone felt the weight of every word, even Brandt. Hale watched her, remembering the drill 2 years prior. He had been the one frozen at the corridor, the one whose mistake could have ended everything. Every order tonight felt heavier because of that memory. He couldn't allow history to repeat itself. He would follow her through any darkness, even if it cost him, even if Brandt tried to make it look like he or Evelyn had failed. As the team prepared, Evelyn checked her gear personally, suppressor attached, sight calibrated, comms tested, operators beside her moved like extensions of her mind. Even the youngest SEAL, barely 20, mirrored her motions unconsciously. Brandt lingered behind, observing. He said nothing, but his plan was already in motion. If the mission failed, even partially, Evelyn's name would be the one on the report. Within the group, subtle glances passed. Lucas Hale caught the eye of Chief Ramirez. "Trust her?" he mouthed. "Always," Ramirez replied silently. One SEAL, hesitant with a new rifle platform, checked with Evelyn. "Adjust the 0 by .75, she whispered. He nodded without hesitation. Trust wasn't spoken aloud here. It was lived. It was earned in fire, darkness, and pressure. Brandt saw it, but didn't understand it, and that would be critical. Despite professionalism, human frailty existed. Another SEAL swallowed hard, thinking of family left behind. Evelyn noticed, subtly adjusted her rhythm, allowed small pauses for reassurance without speaking. She had learned that leadership was about timing, presence, and understanding invisible burdens. Brandt saw only the outward action, missing the invisible currents beneath it. Behind the scenes, command channels were buzzing. Brandt had preemptively drafted contingencies, approvals, and blame assignments. If extraction failed, Evelyn, responsible officer, Hale, operator error. Others, collateral mention. It was meticulous, surgical, and cruelly efficient. Evelyn remained unaware. She was focused on her team, the mission, the men and women who depended on her, not the petty political chessboard Brandt played above them. As the team boarded the boats for insertion, Evelyn took a moment alone. She gazed at the Atlantic horizon, black and restless. Thoughts flickered, the past missions that had forged trust, the lives she had protected quietly, the men behind her who owed her nothing, yet would follow her anywhere, Brandt, waiting to pounce if anything went wrong. She exhaled slowly. Silent strength, she reminded herself. That's all it had ever been. The boats slipped silently into the black water. The operators moved as shadows. Evelyn's voice came over comms. "Maintain formation. Check spacing. Execute on my mark." And in the quiet, unseen by her, the political storm she had ignored was already gathering. Brandt had set the wheels in motion to attach failure to her name, no matter what happened. Cliffhanger. The night operation is about to begin. The storm of waves, darkness, and human error will collide, and Evelyn will be forced to choose between the mission, her team, and the career that Brandt seeks to destroy. No moon, stars obscured by clouds, wind biting at exposed skin. Evelyn Morrow stood at the bow of the rigid hull inflatable boat, hood tight, eyes scanning. Her operators behind her mirrored her movements silently, each breath visible in the cold night air. The hum of the twin engines barely penetrated the sound of waves crashing against the hull. She checked her comms. "Positions confirmed," came Hale's voice. "Spacing?" she asked. 2 meters, the youngest SEAL confirmed. "All operators accounted for." She exhaled, nearly imperceptibly. Calm, quiet, controlled. This was no time for noise. At 0317 hours, sensors picked up an unexpected drone sweep. Not standard, not on the original SOP drone sweep moving northeast. "Adjust course 15 degrees, Evelyn ordered. The operators shifted without hesitation. No one panicked. Brandt, monitoring remotely via encrypted link, noted the adjustment. Frowned. She's improvising, he thought. That's not allowed. He didn't realize improvisation had always been her strongest weapon. One SEAL, Petty Officer Jared Vance, hesitated. Brandt's voice crackled over the comms. "Maintain SOP. Do not deviate." Vance glanced at Evelyn. He knew SOP would fail against this new variable. He had trained with her, trusted her judgment over Brandt's. He made the choice. "Copy, Lieutenant." "Following your lead," he whispered. Evelyn barely registered the words, but the implicit loyalty behind them fortified the team's rhythm. 4:03 hours. Boats approached the coastal urban insertion point. Red lights from the base faded behind them. Operators were ready for landing. Evelyn's voice cut through the comms. "Prepare for silent entry. Watch sectors. Move on my mark." Each step was choreographed but alive, responsive. Even minor mistakes could unravel everything. The team slipped ashore in complete darkness. Shoreline patrols were ahead. Security cameras were live. Any exposure would compromise the simulation and risk real-world repercussions. As they advanced, Evelyn noticed a discarded tarp flapping in the wind near an alleyway. Could be nothing. Could be tripwire. Could be enemy placement. She paused. "Check left flank." "Minimal exposure," she ordered. Hale moved silently, signaling clearance. They proceeded, but then a chain-link gate caught Vance's elbow. Metal clanged softly against concrete. Hale froze. Evelyn whispered, "Ignore the sound. Adjust spacing. Keep moving. Maintain noise discipline." One operator nearly stepped into a puddle that would have echoed like a drum. Evelyn anticipated it, nudged him slightly with her shoulder. The team didn't look at her, didn't need to. They had internalized her presence as their guide. Halfway through the approach, a critical communications device failed. Static replaced clarity. Brandt's voice came through the backup channel, clipped and commanding. "Abort if comms fail. SOP protocol requires abort on lost link." Evelyn assessed the situation instantly. Team all accounted for. Visual line maintained, objective reachable. Do not abort. Use hand signals. Keep formation, she directed. Her decision went against direct orders from Brandt. The SEALs didn't hesitate. They trusted her judgment. In moments like this, trust was not spoken. Lucas Hale glanced at Vance, then the others. They all made micro-adjustments. Each operator moved with Evelyn's rhythm. If she fell, they would stop. If she advanced, they would advance. It was a silent choreography forged in past missions, in chaos, in moments where life and death depended on instinct over procedure. Brandt could not see this. He only saw deviation, risk, potential failure. By 0450 hours, the team reached the simulated high-value target building. Concrete walls, steel doors, limited access points, cameras and patrols simulated real enemy defenses. Evelyn surveyed the perimeter. Hand gestures directed operators into position. No words. Her eyes took in the environment. The wind, the shadows, the sound of distant waves, the occasional scrape of a loose shutter. She spotted a potential blind spot near a side door. 2 operators, south entry. "Keep eyes forward," she whispered into comms. Vance and Hale moved silently, assuming positions. Evelyn's movements were precise, economical. Every breath, every step, calculated. Inside, simulated hostages were secured. Suddenly, one of the targets, an AI-controlled mannequin, was incorrectly positioned, simulating a civilian at risk. Standard SOP. Abort extraction, report incident. Evelyn had to make a split-second decision. Abort. Preserve SOP. Risk the team being exposed during extraction. Proceed. Adapt. Protect team and civilians. Disobey orders. Her voice was calm, firm. Maintain formation. Protect civilians first. Extraction continues on my command. The team adjusted immediately. 5:05 hours. Operators moved with fluid efficiency. Every challenge, tripwires, patrol blind spots, surveillance, was anticipated or mitigated. Hale covered the rear. Vance moved silently alongside the team. They reached the extraction point without incident. Evelyn scanned the horizon. Boats were visible, approaching. Hand signals coordinated the final moves. 7 operators, silent, disciplined, flawless. Despite success, Brandt's contingency plan had not been forgotten. If the mission had failed, Evelyn's name would have been the one attached. Even now, success would not guarantee safety. This was the subtle tyranny of military politics. The game could destroy careers, regardless of merit. Evelyn had learned to accept it. She also knew that her team's trust, earned through shared risk, not rank, was immune to it. Back at the base, 0630 hours. Operators removed gear. checked weapons, cleaned optics, silently logged rounds fired. Evelyn stood at the center, overseeing everything. Colonel Brandt entered, expression neutral. "Well?" he asked. Evelyn responded evenly. "Objective secured. No casualties. Extraction complete." All SOP followed, except minor deviations due to unforeseen variables. Brandt paused. He glanced at the team. 7 faces. Unflinching, loyal, competent. He realized in that moment that this operation had succeeded because of her judgment, not in spite of it. Brandt had pre-drafted memos, contingency reports, and blame assignments. Now, in the presence of the team, those papers were meaningless. Operators could testify. Logs would show deviations were tactical, not negligent. Evelyn allowed the silence to linger. She didn't gloat. She didn't justify. She simply observed, let the facts speak. Once debriefed, the team filed out individually. Hale lingered. "Lieutenant, I didn't think we'd make it through that last section," he admitted quietly. Evelyn looked at him, voice low but firm. "You followed every cue. You stayed alive. That's what counts. No praise, no ceremony, just acknowledgement, trust, mutual, silent, absolute." Brandt left the room after debrief. No words. But inside, a grudging acknowledgement formed. He had underestimated silent strength, and for the first time, he realized that leadership was more than rank, visibility, and control. Yet, his nature would not allow him to admit it aloud. This left a lingering tension. Political games were not over. Evelyn's integrity and skill had won the operation, but the battle for perception was ongoing. For Evelyn, the night reinforced what she had always known. Leadership was earned in silence. Obedience alone did not save lives. Courage was not always visible trust. Once earned, was stronger than any directive. For the SEALs, the night reinforced what they had long known. Evelyn's judgment was their lifeline. She would not ask them to do anything she hadn't already assessed herself. Silent authority was more reliable than any chain of command for Brandt. The night reinforced a bitter truth. Not all battles could be controlled. Not all victories could be claimed. Not all operators could be manipulated. As dawn broke over the Atlantic horizon, the base quieted. Operators returned to quarters. Evelyn cleaned her gear alone. She thought of the past missions, the trust of her team, and the political storm still looming. Her phone buzzed. A new memo from Brandt. She didn't open it immediately. She didn't need to. She knew it would be a challenge. But for now, the mission had succeeded. The storm could wait. Cliffhanger. Brandt's political maneuvering is still active. A new threat looms, not from the ocean, not from the enemy, but from those who will manipulate rules, reports, and perception to undermine her. Evelyn will need every ounce of quiet strength, every lesson from the past, to survive what comes next. The first light of dawn barely touched Fort Hollis. Red security lights hummed as Evelyn Morrow stepped from the boats, gear still damp, uniforms streaked with salt and sweat. Her operators followed silently, each carrying the weight of a mission well executed and the unspoken gratitude owed to the leader who had guided them through chaos. The base itself was quiet. Too quiet. Brandt's office was already buzzing. Reports, logs, drafted memos, assignments waiting for signatures, a subtle web of bureaucracy designed to pin blame in the wrong place. Evelyn knew this game. She also knew one thing. She had her team, and they had her back. Brandt summoned Evelyn to a private debriefing. The room smelled of old coffee and paper. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Lieutenant Morrow," he said, "I reviewed the mission logs. Some deviations from SOP." Evelyn remained seated, hands folded. Calm. Neutral. "Yes, sir." "There were deviations," she said. "They were tactical decisions necessary to ensure team safety and mission success." He leaned back. Silence hung. Then he sighed. "You handled it well. Too well." It was a thinly veiled critique. He would try to find fault no matter what. But the truth could not be denied. She had succeeded where he had intended to trap her. Word of Brandt's intended memo leaked, carelessly, from administrative channels. Hale, Vance, and the other SEALs requested a formal debrief in which they were allowed to speak. One by one, they detailed the events of the operation, highlighting Evelyn's tactical decisions, calm judgment, and leadership under pressure. Every word stripped Brandt's subtle attempt to assign blame. The moral of the testimony was simple. The operation succeeded because of Evelyn, not in spite of her. Brandt had underestimated both the team's loyalty and the clarity of the records. Brandt left the debrief without confrontation. Inside, he wrestled with grudging acknowledgement. Evelyn Morrow had demonstrated leadership far beyond what he had expected, but externally, he could not admit it. The battle for ego and perception lingered. He would continue to observe, calculate, and maneuver, but Evelyn had survived the storm intact. Hale lingered after the debrief. "Lieutenant," he said, voice low, I don't know if I'd have followed through without you." Evelyn's expression softened for the briefest moment. "You followed," she said simply. "That's all that matters. Trust isn't given, it's acted upon." He nodded, understanding that lesson now in full. Years of guilt, hesitation, and self-doubt found a measure of closure. He would carry it with him into every future operation. For Evelyn, the aftermath reinforced everything she had learned over the years. Courage is often invisible. Leadership is not measured by rank, visibility, or recognition. Success is not in avoiding failure, but in guiding others through it. She didn't seek accolades. She sought only to do what was right, to ensure her team returned safely, and to honor the principles instilled in her from the earliest days at home and at Annapolis. Weeks later, Evelyn passed the same gun shop where she had first been laughed at. She didn't enter. She didn't need to. The clerk recognized her, hesitated, attempted an apology. She accepted it silently, not with words, but with presence. A nod, a small, measured step forward. Sometimes respect could not be demanded, only observed. Behind her, she knew the 7 SEALs she had trained, and who had trusted her, walked the same path. Evelyn returned to her quarters, unpacked her gear, and stared at the Atlantic horizon. She thought of the drills where she had taken the blame for others' mistakes, the patrols where she had guided her team through chaos, the moments of quiet trust that had built loyalty stronger than any order. She realized that every small decision, every act of moral courage, had accumulated. The recognition she had long ignored, quiet, unspoken, was the most enduring reward. Hale, Vance, and the rest of the operators returned to their routines. No fanfare, no public commendations. Just the satisfaction of having executed a mission successfully, led by someone who had earned their trust in fire, storm, and darkness. Brandt remained in the background, a shadow of bureaucracy and ego. He could not undo what had been earned in the field. The lesson was simple. True leadership transcends politics. All loose threads resolved, Hale's survivor guilt transformed into confidence. He now moved forward with trust and decisiveness. Vance's loyalty, previously hesitant, was cemented by Evelyn's calm, ethical choices. Brandt's obstructionism remained, but impotent against documented truth and team solidarity. The gun shop clerk symbolically represented the world's initial underestimation of her, a world that eventually had to reckon with reality. Evelyn stood at dawn, looking out at the ocean. Her reflection in the water reminded her of every lesson learned. Strength is quiet, deliberate, and tested in adversity. Courage is moral as well as physical. Trust is earned silently and becomes more durable than any mandate or title. True leadership is measured by the lives protected, not the accolades received. She realized the final truth. Respect cannot be demanded. It can only be demonstrated. And she had demonstrated it. They had laughed at her. They had doubted her. They had underestimated her. And still, she had stood silently, prepared, disciplined, and resolute. The world eventually caught up, not because she forced it, but because truth, courage, and quiet strength cannot be ignored forever. Leadership is not a title. Courage is not a performance. Respect is not a reward. It is earned through action, integrity, and the courage to do what is right when no one is watching. Lieutenant Evelyn Morrow had earned all three.